Namaste Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Sarupaya Swamine Tapoharine. Friends, at the very outset, I must thank Swamis Shastraganandaji and Dibbagunanandaji for having remembered me on this excellent occasion. It's always a pleasure to address an erudite virtual audience like yours. I've been asked to speak on Be and Make, Indian perspective on character building and emotional intelligence management. You will certainly agree with me that the ideas of Swami Vivekananda on character building are too vast to be dealt with in 30 minutes. However, I would try to explain Swami Vivekananda's views on man-making and character building, especially its relevance to the youth. As such, the thematic development of the seminar naturally is centering around man-making and character building. Swami Vivekananda once told, "Man-making is my mission." He further said, I quote, "Now my one desire is to rouse the country, this living leviathan that has lost all faith in its power and makes no response." Unquote. Swamiji also said, quoted, "Society must awaken from its deep slumber of tamas." Now, what is made by man-making? In an exasperation, Swamiji described the masses as mummies. He said, I again quote, "Let the dead bury the dead." In the words of Swami Vivekananda, I quote again, "Each soul is potentially divine." Quoted, "I am the servant of that God whom the ignorant call man." He proclaimed, infinite perfection is in every man, though unmanifested. Every man has in him the potentiality of attaining to perfect saintliness, rishihood, or to the most exalted position of an avatara, or to the greatness of a hero in material discoveries. Every human being is potentially divine. This is a voyage to perfection, and the key to unlock the treasure within is a drilling machine called man-making and character building. Now the question that arises is, what do we understand by character? Ordinarily, character is sum total of sanskaras, that is, the tendencies in a human being. Everybody is unique by himself so far as these tendencies are concerned. Even in the same family, having almost same genetic background, pupils' tendencies differ a lot from one another. In his book Karma Yoga, Swamiji dwelt upon three primordial forces that we find in nature: sattva, rajas and tamas. In the society, we find these three gunas manifest themselves as mental stability, dynamism, and passivity or inertness. Swamiji noticed the entire country steeped in the darkness of tamas. One has to get up and try to shake up inertness and dive into the ocean of action. After grinding work, your mind is purified and you become swatika. So many good and bad tendencies are simultaneously working within us through 10 kinds of sense organs. We call this the sendriya. This is how we gradually make our willpower strong. Swamiji says, you are because you wanted to be. Bad tendencies will haunt us, compel us to do negative exercises which take us from dark to the darker. At this stage, what is required is to have a strong will to defeat the evil forces within and encourage the good forces to facilitate this exercise. This is why in man-making and character-building exercise, three qualities are absolutely necessary. That is, concentration, confidence, and conviction. The acme of man-making and character-building education is to reach the stage where one can feel the purport of Buddha's message, Atmo Dipo Bhavo. Be a light unto yourself. The current of will and its expression must be under one's control. One must be able to neutralize the bad sanskaras and refine the good sanskaras and take the same forward. Swamiji says, three things are absolutely necessary to make a man great, make a nation great. What are those three things? Number one, being good and doing good. Number two, absence of jealousy. Number three, power of conviction. Now among the enlightened citizens, we find two kinds of people. One category of people aspire and struggle for Ubhudaya, prosperity, and the other category pray for Nishriyasa, moksha or salvation. Shankaracharya said, Divido hi vidokto dharmaha pravritti lakshana nivritti lakshana cha. In this connection, we may have a glance at the life of a human being. We find that life is a quadrangle of four purusharthas, objects of human pursuit: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. A person treading on the path of pravritti marga has to walk all the way from dharma to moksha, while a person who is mumukshu, aspirant for moksha, has to concentrate on the supreme goal of life, namely mokshas. This is why our culture speaks of three hurdles: adibhautik, adidoipik, and adhyatmik. We have to cross every step before we reach our cherished milestone of becoming an enlightened citizen. It is the faculty of discrimination between good and bad that determines a real man, a man with capital M, a man who is constantly moving towards perfection. This perfection makes him a man. Sri Ramakrishna said, Manush consists of man, dignity and respect, and Hush, the faculty of discrimination between positive and negative, good and bad, etc. It is mentioned in the Vedas. The Acharya is giving instruction to the disciple on the convocation ceremony. Yani anubhadyani karmani tani savityavyani no itorani. You should perform only those acts which are good for you, your family, your state, your nation. Somebody who can keep the temptation away and walk straight forward is truly a man with capital M. Tarobo pihi jivanti mrigapakshinaha sa jivati mano yasyo manonena hi jivati. Swamiji once claimed, I hold every man a traitor who, having been educated at their expense, pays not the least heed to them. So, a man lives, a beast or a bird also live, but he alone lives who lives at intellectual level. Which is why it's not possible for a man with capital M to become a traitor to those people who helped him in becoming and being what he is today. A true man of character must have sympathy, love and compassion for others. Swamiji urges upon all of us, take a man where he stands and give him a lift. And this is why, to my humble mind, the Samam Bonam of Swamiji's message and teaching in two words are be and make. An important aspect of the present day society's value system in education. This is concerned with the well-being of the youths of our country and is of paramount importance. On the one hand, there is much discussed decline in values and the enormous increase in social, psychological and existential problems in the contemporary society. The most distressing aspect of this scenario is that it is mostly the youths who are involved in these problems. On the other hand, it is obvious that much of these problems could have been avoided or mitigated if the youth had received proper education in values and morals, personal guidance, or counseling. There is a proverb in Bengali, Aponi achori dharma porere shikhao. You must practice before you profess. This is also the sine qua non for character building and man-making process. Let me give you an example from Gandhiji's life. This is like this. A small boy became sugar addict. He used to take a lot of sugar. His mother was very apprehensive that at this rate, if someone took sugar, he was sure to fall seriously ill today or tomorrow. The mother tried her level best to dissuade the son from his unhealthy practice, but to no effect. The son turned a deaf ear even to his mother. What to do? The mother was thinking. All of a sudden, it occurred to her mind that her son is very much fond of Gandhiji, and if Gandhiji gives the same advice, then the boy will definitely obey. Such was his respect to Bapuji. One day the boy's mother took him to Bapuji. She narrated her tale of woes, that her son was a sugar addict, and that she apprehended that if this bad habit goes on, and that she apprehended that if this bad habit goes on, then one day he would surely fall seriously ill. Well, after hearing everything from the lady, Gandhiji asked the lady to bring her son after 15 days. The mother and the child returned home. Exactly after 15 days, they went to Bapuji again. Bapuji advised the boy not to eat too much of sugar. This may cause serious health hazards. The boy promised to stop taking sugar from that day. Mother was extremely happy. She thanked Bapuji and said, Bapuji, I was sure that my son would listen to you. But then why did you take 15 days to issue this advice to my son? Gandhiji said, 15 days back, when you came, I myself used to take a lot of sugar. But within the last 15 days, I gave up the habit. I thought I had now acquired moral authority to advise your son. I advised and he readily agreed to obey. You have already seen. Practice is better than precept. That's why the message is clear and loud. Apani achari dharma porere shikhao. First be and then make. One of the difficulties in spreading moral education is that religions of the world have traditionally been regarded as custodians of morality, and Indian society is markedly pluralistic. Therefore, attempts to spread moral education, especially through our educational institutions, can cause controversies and negative reactions. What is needed in the pluralistic situation in India today is a set of values or moral principles which are universally acceptable and at the same time are in tune with the pluralistic and inclusive nature of our polity. For the youth of this country, Swami Vivekananda is a role model, an icon, an embodiment of youth power, dynamism and vibrancy. He ignited young minds saying, I quote, my faith is in the younger generation. The modern generation, out of them will come my workers. They will work out the whole problem like lions. Vivekananda's teachings are particularly relevant today at a time when divisive forces are working overtime to weaken our country. Let us hope his philosophy and the ideals which he lived continue to inspire our younger generation. India's youth has the capacity to make Swami Vivekananda's third prediction of, quoted, India rising to greater heights of prosperity and power, becoming a reality gradually. Youth is that wonderful time in the life when energy is limitless, human creativity is at its best, and the never say die spirit is at its peak. He said, give me 100 energetic young men and I shall transform India. Vivekananda had said thus. His faith in the Indian youth never wavered. He said, my faith is in younger generation modern generation, out of them will come my workers, they will work out whole problem like lands, as I have already mentioned earlier. Youth is also an impressionable age wherein we try to model our life in line with that of a role model or icon. Who else can be a better role model for the youths of India other than the great Swami Vivekananda today? Our youth has the ability to meet and face up to these challenges. We also need to accept the difficult fact that this is not high on the list of their priorities. Now, how do we really get our young, whose role models and icons today are mostly from the economic, technology, music, cinema, and sports arenas, to consider nation building as an important facet of our productive lives? How do we get them to address the myriad problems facing us? Finding solutions to the complex social, economic, infrastructural, political, and poverty-related problems is indeed a great challenge. Swami Vivekananda suggested the national reconstruction with the ideals of Tyaga and Seva, the most important purpose of living for the young. To the more discerning, he made this way of life a spiritual pursuit. He has, in very simple terms, given the youth a higher ideal to live for and a higher state to reach within the limitations and boundaries of human existence. The only qualification that Swamiji wanted our youth to have was the wonderful ability to feel. He wanted that feeling for our fellow beings, the downtrodden and the poor, which would make us sleepless and make our heads thrill and our hearts throb. In doing so, he had assured us that an indomitable power would come to us and we will be able to throw away all our self-conscience and place ourselves as servants of society. We use our inner energy, and this inner energy will ultimately go to transcend the problems of our human brotherhood. To those who wanted to go beyond just feeling and take to concrete action, he gave this potent mantra. The power of the three P's: purity, patience, and perseverance. These three words, in my opinion, are the qualities that every young person desiring to do social work needs to possess. Purity in thought, word, and deed. Patience to understand the dynamics of any community development activity, and the fact that society is also slow to understand and quick to level all such efforts. One also needs great perseverance to work in the complex settings of Indian society. Working with the realities of social, economic, and political diversity needs enormous perseverance. The students of today are very much confused as to whom to follow, what to trust, how to proceed, and whom to idolize. In this situation, the invigorating life and message of Swami Vivekananda provides perennial inspiration, guidance, and support. Let me put here 5 pillars of education based on the message of Swamiji, which will serve as guidelines for students, both boys and girls. These are goal orientation, moral integrity, self-discipline, service, and strength. While analyzing the story of human development in the historical perspective, we find that a man, a single individual, is not much superior to other abhuman animals. Naturally, the question arises, then what exactly distinguishes man from abhuman or subhuman creatures? The answer is, man possesses the capacity to think, to believe, and to work unitedly, and these qualities of man makes him superior to other species in the animal kingdom. For example, the ants can move in band, but they can't establish a classless society, a socialistic society, by declaring war and ultimately killing the queen ant, and for that matter, the same is the case with the bees. They move unitedly, but they can't kill the queen bee and establish an egalitarian society. Let us take another example regarding the use of money. Suppose you give a piece of paper, currency, to a chimpanzee, and you ask for a pair of bananas in lieu thereof, or tell the chimpanzee that by showing this piece of paper, currency, it will get 5 bananas. These words do not matter much for him, but man takes your word seriously. That's how man believes in the story of heaven and hell, the story of a classless society, the story of a share market crash, the story of nationalism, or in the gospel of universal brotherhood. But an abhuman creature doesn't. So Vivekananda says, trust, faith, conviction, concentration, these are the virtues which make you a true man. If we look at the history of mankind, we find 3 common elements, namely famine, pandemic, and war. Even in the 21st century, can you really touch your heart and say that we could conquer these calamities? One has to answer these questions. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that we couldn't make any progress in this direction. We have done wonderfully well in certain areas of material and secular developments. But despite all such developments, we have not been able as yet to come out of the threats of famine, pandemic, and war. For example, the COVID-19 pandemic. We all know what havoc is being wrought all over the world by this minuscule deadly virus. We still hear the rumblings of war. As long as there shall be animality in man, these rumblings of war will be heard. Even standing at the present scenario, can we claim that we have conquered the threat of famine and hunger fully? Perhaps the answer is no. Well, things have certainly changed for the better on all fronts, but we have miserably failed to manifest our divinity as Swami Vivekananda wanted of us. Through our thoughts, actions, and expressions, let us recall Chekhov, who said, if you find a gun in the first scene of an opera, in the third scene, you may be sure that bullets will come out of this gun. Standing on the onset of the 3rd decade of the 21st century, we are happy to know that we have, to a large extent, come out of this scenario that Chekhov scripted for us. But we must note, although we have considerably reduced the tension of hunger, war, and so on, new problems are raising their ugly heads. Now the problems are, to name a few, overeating, obesity, ecological imbalance, climate change, lack of empathy, slackness in family bondage, mere howling around without any flavor of the soul, cruelty of man, change of values, change of social psyche, and so on. Some people even do not hesitate to name the modern age as age of surveillance capitalism. Now people are not content with mere skill development, but they are out in search of creating artificial intelligence. Robotic engineering and computers are working miracles, but all these exercises remind us what a Bengali writer says, Bigyan diyeche beg, kere niyeche abeg. Science has given us motion and snatched away emotion from us. In 2013, Google launched a project named Calico Project, which vows to discover the ways and means to conquer old age and even death. We have done very well in our materialistic search, but we are as much lagging behind in our search of souls. Swami Vivekananda said, I again quote, in every man there are 3 forces. Sometimes tamas prevails, we become lazy, we can't move, we are inactive, bound by certain ideas or by mere dullness. At another times activity, rajas prevails, and at still other times that calm balancing of both sattva. Again, in different pain, one of these forces is generally predominant. The characteristic of one man is inactivity, dullness and laziness, that of another activity, power, manifestation of energy, and in still another we find the sweetness, calmness and gentleness, which are due to the balancing of both action and inaction. So in all creation, in animals, in plants, and in men, we find the more or less typical manifestation of all these different forces. These three forces exist in every human being in varying proportions, with different ones predominating at different times. The forces may vary in their dominance initially, but will gradually form a stable pattern that will determine the individual's personality. As a result, it's often referred to as the tridimensional personality theory. We can characterize a person as Sattvika, Rajasika, or Tamasika, depending on the principal force that is dominant in the person. A Sattvika will be heavily endowed with compassion, unselfishness, integrity, patience, forbearance, humility, and other similar virtues. Activeness, egoism, passion, ambition, materialism, power-mongering, and other similar qualities are abundant in a Rajasika. A person who appears lazy, dull, dishonest, pessimistic, jealous, and possessive most of the time will be branded as Tamasika. Swamiji further said, "Going around the whole world, I find that people of this country are immersed in great tamas, inactivity, compared with people of other countries. On the outside, there is a simulation of Swatika, calm and balanced state, but inside, downright inertness like that of stocks and stones. How much of enterprise and devotion to work, how much enthusiasm and manifestation of rajas are there in the lives of the Western people, while in your own country, it is as if the blood has become congealed in the heart, so that it cannot circulate in the veins, as if paralysis has overtaken the body and it has become languid. So my idea is first to make the people active by developing their rajas and thus make them fit for the struggle for existence." In another instance, he said, I quote, "In India, the quality of rajas is almost absent. The same is the case with Swatika in the West. It is certain, therefore, that the real life of the Western world depends upon the influx from India of the current of Sattva. And it is also certain that unless we empower and submerge our tamas by the opposite tide of rajas, we shall never gain any worldly good or welfare in this life. It is also equally certain that we shall meet many formidable obstacles in the path of realization of those noble aspirations and ideals connected with our afterlife. In making money, or in worshipping God, or in doing anything, the stronger the power of concentration, the better will that thing be done. This is the one call, the one knock, which opens the gates of nature and lets out floods of light. This, the power of concentration, is the only key to the treasure house of knowledge. The system of Raja Yoga deals almost exclusively with this. In the present state of our body, we are so much distracted, and the mind is frittering away its energies upon 100 sorts of things. As soon as I try to calm my thoughts and concentrate my mind upon any one object of knowledge, thousands of undesired impulses rush into the brain, thousands of thoughts rush into the mind and disturb it. How to check it and bring the mind under control is the whole subject of study in Raja Yoga. Understanding Swami Vivekananda and his message and putting it across our youth would be the simplest way in which I feel that we could address many of the problems that India is facing today. Each young person could begin with himself, prepare himself for the work ahead by ensuring that his personality is well shaped and rounded. He needs to ensure that his physical, mental, social, and psychological faculties are well tuned to the work ahead. The young need direction And what greater focus is there than that of serving others? One needs to be pragmatic and keep one's needs and limitations in mind before embarking on any such activity. One needs to begin with oneself first and then gradually expand this reach concentrically to include more and more deserving persons. This is one of the ways that the success and practicality of our social actions can be demonstrated to the youth of today. Each young person can continue to be what he is, a technocrat, a scientist, an engineer or a doctor, etc. What matters the most is the understanding that in undertaking social activities lies the answer not only to the problems of people around us, but also to our own inner problems and dilemmas. Thus, we have to accept in our heart of hearts that Swami Vivekananda is the rejuvenator of Indian thought in modern times and is the fittest role model for the young generation. However, I would like to add here that as far as I understand, this invigorating and life-giving message of Swamiji is not only for the young generation, but also applies to people belonging to all walks of life, teachers, doctors, entrepreneurs, professionals, even senior citizens. Whichever walk of life you may belong to, whichever vocation, whatsoever age group be, Swamiji stands before us all as a glowing epitome of sacrifice, service and spirituality. With these few words, I wish all of you all the best, the very best, and pray to Swamiji Maharaj for your all-round well-being. May Swamiji Maharaj bless us all. Thank you so very much.